Hi everyone, today I want to show you something about the Burson Conductor GT4. This is the latest device in their conductor series from Burson Audio. So this one is a DAC, a preamp and an amp all in one box. So this device also comes in 3 different versions. So you have the standard package that goes for around 2,400 to 2,800 bucks most of the time, with V6 vivid op amps and silent power module 1. And then you have the deluxe package that goes for around 2,900 to 3,400 bucks most of the time. That has upgraded vivid op amps, so the V7, and upgraded silent power modules too. So, and also comes with a supercharger power supply. Then we have, last but not least, the max package. So here it goes for around 3,400 to 3,900 bucks. It is kind of the same than the deluxe package. The only difference here is that it comes with the fusion core, so improved power supply you see here. Big thank you now at this point to Burson Audio for lending me the unit for review purposes. But they never said what I can or cannot say, so my opinion about that is never influenced by this. They just sent me the device and have fun with it. Nothing more, nothing less. Now with this out of the way, I would say let's get right into it and start the unboxing. Alright, so here we have the package of the Burson Conductor GT4. It is kind of a just grey package with a sticker on it. Here you see the front and back side and a few specifications about the device, and also that is 100% owned and operated in Australia. Alright, I would say let's open that up right away. A little bit of cat interference. Here we have another box, and also just the same information that we had on the front side. Alright, so here we go. Here we have the Burson Conductor GT4. It is quite securely packaged. Here you have, I guess, the accessoires. Let's give them a look. Here we have a small little remote control. It feels quite nice. Just a few buttons on there. They rattle a bit when you shake it. But otherwise a nice small remote control. Here you have some adapters. Here we have an XLR to RCR adapter. I think you can just use the special ones here to connect, because I think in the manual there was stated something that it needed the special ones here. So this is one is for the microphone and the headphones. You can just plug it here, so you can just use it with one port that it's on front, in case you have a cable that has them separated. Here we have an USB-C cable. And for unscrewing the screws, if you want to look inside the device, it's also possible. Here we have the supercharger that comes with the deluxe version. And here you have the aux cable. This seems to be the op amps that are in the standard package, so they removed these and made here, because it's the deluxe version, the V7 op amps. So I guess they included the old ones here in the package. Here you have 4 different power sockets, so you can just slide that inside the supercharger like that. And you can use the device in a lot of countries. Let's come to the Conductor GT4 now. It is quite heavy. Alright, so here we have it. It's a nice machined metallic case. The buttons feel nice. Have a nice click to them. And nice volume wheel. I quite like the orange color here. It also has a nice click to it. Here you have some feet, some rubber feet, and at the back side you have the different connections. So here you have the Bluetooth antenna, the 12 volts DC power inlet, the XMOS USB port, so the USB-C port, and also 12 volt trigger out, 12 volt trigger in, the coaxial Toslink connection, and RCR and XLR inputs, and also an RCR sub and XLR pre-out port. So quite a lot of things here. Alright, let's check out now what would be in the max package. So the max package, there is the fusion core. That should be this one here. The same brown box with a sticker on it that says fusion core. Let's open it up right away now. Alright, here we go. So this time we have a white box, also with the same label in front now, that shows the device itself. So here we have the Fusion core that is kind of the same style, the same approach that the Burson Conductor GT4 has, with this machined metallic case. And here you plug the power in. It is also quite heavy. So you also have the same little feet here. This is just the power plug here. So this time no adapters for different countries. It's a little bit sad, but fine. And here you have the little cable that goes into the Fusion core and then into the device itself, like the Burson Conductor GT4. Alright, that's it pretty much from the Burson Conductor GT4 and the Fusion core. Alright, so having unboxed the Burson Conductor GT4, what can I say about the build quality first? So it comes with a fully machined metallic cool case that works like a big heatsink. So the device weighs over 5 kilograms, so it is quite heavy. That is also the reason why I'm not holding it here like this for you to show you the device itself, because it is quite heavy and I will get tired of it. It also has a decently sized screen in front. That shows the settings quite nicely, and also comes with a small remote control that feels to be made out of of the same material than the Burson Conductor GT4 itself. So I would say the build quality here is quite good. It feels not cheap. You have no plastic there or something, so everything feels could be quite refined. So the device itself is a Class A headphone amplifier that has a 100 watts idling bias and 10 watts of Class A power with headphones, so that have an impedance of 16 ohms via the XLR outputs and 5 watts with the single-ended headphone jacks. So it really has plenty of power to even drive hard-to-drive headphones quite easily. But since it is a Class A amplifier and it takes that much energy to drive, it does get quite warm. So I would suggest don't put anything on top or down there, so you don't risk anything overheating, because when I touch it while it's running, it really is a little bit unpleasant to touch, so it really does get quite warm. Therefore, it also has active cooling actually inside, so there's 2 smaller fans on each side. But if you're now worried about the noise, I can tell you that this is not really an issue, because this is really quite silent. I mean, if you put your ear right next to the device and it's quite silent in your environment, then yes, you will hear it very slightly. But in normal use cases, if you don't have it right next to you like this, it should be fine, because it is really not loud at all. The device itself also has a unique headphone and subwoofer mode. In case you want to put a subwoofer there, it is actually possible. It also is a full preamp, so you could use it even for powered speakers as well. The device itself has 2 DAC chips in there that are independently powered, so each one of them handles 1 channel, so 1 for the left and 1 for the right. This helps to prevent cross-channel interferences, so for better channel separation. I also tested this when you put the volume wheel on the lower levels, for example 1 to 30%, then some devices have the issue here that you have then a bit of channel imbalance, so one side is a bit more quiet than the other one, and if you turn the volume up a little bit, this one stabilizes and both sides are the same. But this device here doesn't have this problem at all, so even when you drive them on the lower settings, there is no channel imbalance here present, so that was quite nice. The device itself can connect quite instantly to, for example, smartphones, laptops, because it has an USB-C input that also supports native DSD 512 and a 32-bit 786 kHz of audio playback. It also has a Bluetooth 5.0 receiver that supports 24 bits and 96 kHz with ADAPT-X HD and LDAC codecs. So it is also room tested if this is a concern for you. So it is quite versatile. It also has a dedicated gaming headphone output. So it does also support gaming headsets that have a mic input, for example. So it supports TRRS plugs. So in case you want to use it, you can enable this in the settings of the device. Since the device can output 10 watts at 16 ohms, it is quite powerful enough to also drive very hard to drive headphones like the HiFiMan Susvara or Modhouse Tungstens. I also tried here the HiFiMan HE6SE V2. That is also quite hard to drive, and it was quite enjoyable with this headphone amplifier. So you can also use IEMs with the device, at least if you're not somebody who is really fond on listening to music very quietly. I found it to be helpful that the device with the display allows for really precise changing of volume. So you will not have, like, if you push it too much, blasting your ears off. No, with this, it was quite usable. One thing you need to be aware of, though, is that with very sensitive IEMs, if you put them there, there is always a little bit of a hiss, a little bit of noise floor always present. Even if you increase or decrease the volume, there's always this little hiss if you have the very sensitive IEMs. But then the question is also, do you really need to use such a powerful device for IEMs? Now, that's up to you to decide, but I wanted you to be aware of that there is a little bit of a hiss with very sensitive IEMs present. Otherwise, the device itself, when using with just headphones, it has a rather silent noise floor. So at least in the Deluxe and Max package with the better power supplies. So the device itself has single-ended 3.5 headphone output and another single-ended 6.3mm headphone output, while also having one balanced XLR headphone output. And I can tell you, if you're worried now, if the XLR, for example, sounds better than the single-ended ones, no, this is not really the case. They all sound the same, except keep in mind, if you have very hard to drive headphones, you should really take the XLR output because it delivers more power. But otherwise, they sound all quite alike, so you can take just any and without any worries about the sound quality. All right, so let's come now to the sound itself. How did the Burson Conductor GT4 sound to my ears? So for me, it was a very detailed sound presentation, that also the tone and timbre is quite good. It feels quite natural and clean. It brings a nice controlled bass performance with it, with a good punch and slam. So also if you decide to go for a bit heavier bass EQ, for example, that I sometimes like to do, it does not distort, it doesn't have any problems with that. So I quite enjoyed that. It also feels to be a little bit of a step up when you compare to the Burson Playmate 3 that I reviewed previously on my channel. So it indeed topped it a little bit. So the Burson Conductor GT4 is leaning towards being a little bit more bright, but also very detailed. It has a little bit of a tendency to be a little bit more treble, aggressive. Aggressive is not a real word for it, but it has a tendency to be also a little bit more bright. So with already bright headphones, like for example the HiFiMan Aria Stealth, it was sometimes having a little bit the issue, if you're sensitive to it, to be too bright in some areas with, for example, female voices that amplified it a little bit. So be aware of that. But if you have like a bit warmer tuned headphone that is not brightly tuned like the HiFiMan Aria Stealth, it shouldn't be any problem, because I found it to have really good dynamics and is quite engaging. While also the imaging and soundstage are quite expansive and precise, so I found it quite enjoyable in that case. Alright, so let's now come to, is it worth it to go from the standard version to the deluxe version or even the max version? I can only tell you the differences between, for example, the deluxe and the max package, because I do not have my hands on the standard package, sadly. But what I can say is that when I tested previously the smaller sibling like the Burson Playmate 3, there I had the standard version and later on the deluxe version, so with the better op amps, for example, there it really made a difference, with like the better internals and also the supercharger. It really did make a sonic improvement that was quite audible to me. So I assume here that if you go from the standard package to the deluxe package, it really does make a bigger difference. When comparing it now to the max package, like the deluxe to the max package, and the only difference is really that you have an upgraded power supply, so the Fusion core. I mean, There was a small difference, so you had a little bit lower noise floor, you had a little bit more smoother and more detailed sound presentation, but really the changes between the deluxe and the max package were not that big. So if this is worth to you $600, that is fully up to you to decide. But I would, my experience, really suggest take at least the deluxe version. But if you have some spare change to spend, yes, you can go for the max version. It does have a little bit of a difference, but the bigger difference, I assume, is between the standard and the deluxe version. So all in all, now I can say, generally speaking, that is a great all-in-one box that is not too big and is making a great performance also for like the most audiophile person that also has maybe hard to drive headphones. That is not a problem here with this all-in-one solution. I was quite happy with it. Maybe also something that could be important now for you is to give the device itself a closer look at the settings, for example, to actually see how it is presented, which settings there are, which you can change, with filter settings are there. So I would say let's give the device a closer look now. So here we have the settings of the Burson Conductor GT4. So first of all, we have here the input selection. So you can choose between USB, Toslink, coaxial, Bluetooth, RCA 1 and 2, and XLR 1 and 2. So next, so here we have the output selection. So headphone amp output only, headphone and subwoofer, or pre-out and DAC out. So now let's come to the settings itself. So here we have some settings about, for example, the gain level switch, so high gain or low gain. So low gain setting is actually 10% of the power of the high gain setting. Here we have also the different FIR filters. So the filters mainly affect the high frequency roll-offs. So usually in the 18 kilohertz and above frequency range, they do not have that much of an impact. But yeah, check them out if you want to. So here we have the digital phase locked loop settings from high, mid, low for DSD and PCM. This controls how tightly the DAC locks onto the input signal. So a lower setting does improve the jitter rejection. So also we have a setting for phases. Turn that on for analog tape recording. We also have an OLED display brightness setting, so you can either choose low or high, so how bright the panel here is. Then we have the auto off function, so the device actually automatically turns off after 20 minutes of just idling. And also here I have the microphone setting, so if you don't use it, I would highly suggest you turn that off. Because it shares the same USB port and the XMOS input. So, and also here we have the reset function to restore all settings back to factory default. And here you have a function that flips the screen, so you can also use it vertically. And these are all the settings that you can choose from here. All right, so that is pretty much from the Burson Conductor GT4.